if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because it's just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But you know, if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning and welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. And we're at an end now when it comes to WandaVision. Some might say mercifully. And now that we're at the end of this whole, thing, I think we covered a lot of my big problems with the show last week. But we didn't take into consideration the finale. And let's just get it out of the way. A lot of the effects don't hold up as well as you would hope. The Vision on Vision battle doesn't look great. A lot of the Wanda and Agatha battle doesn't look great. The battle kind of stalls out in the middle randomly, and I don't think that was really necessary. And I think that fundamentally my issue is, and having watched this now, and I'm going to watch Multiverse of Madness for next week, having gone through this entire show, the concrete problem that I can definitively say I have is that this show, the handshake between this show and Multiverse of Madness is not as strong as it should have been. And it's a reasonably small adjustment to make that would make it a better handoff. And we touched on it last week, the idea that Agatha shouldn't have been, quote-unquote, the villain. And that's kind of the weird situation the show puts the viewer in, is that Agatha is a bad guy, and, Hayward, he's a bad guy. The head of S.W.O.R.D., he's a bad guy, too. Obviously they're both bad guys, but it doesn't exonerate Wanda from what she did. I mean, yeah, there are still bad guys here in this show, but it doesn't make what Wanda did okay. And I think that, and this is the other big thing that makes me think this show is not, that Wanda's not actually dead. This show ends with Wanda and Vision having that moment where they're saying goodbye, and it's her saying goodbye to the memory of Vision that it turns out is it's part of the Mind Stone that lives within Wanda, and that is, that's what this manifestation is. It's okay, that's cool, I guess, but it doesn't really do too much. The issue I have with this whole thing is there's a way to make Agatha a way more compelling character. And I think that Agatha gets shafted because of what this show is to the wider MCU. I think Agatha's role should have been closer to what Monica Geraldine was earlier on in the show, where it's there's something off about her. We don't know, she doesn't quite fit into the neighborhood, she doesn't have a house, that should have been Agatha. And I realize that's not Agatha's role in the comics, but it should have been, this show should have been Agatha or and I think that putting her in a situation where she comes into the town and she like, okay, so Wanda has taken over. Here's this other witch who's showing up and is here to be like, okay, so something's going on. I'm here to stop it. And all of that. Maybe you have it where it's like she has the ulterior motive where she's doing it not to save Westview, but because she wants the power for herself. But don't turn her into this ridiculously over the top villain in the end where it's like, I want to steal the power of the Scarlet Witch. And then as we get to the end, and when Wanda defeats her and she absorbs the power and absorbs even Agatha's power, you turn it something somewhat, you know, it does end up becoming something somewhat tragic for that character in that case, where Agatha, in this hypothetical alternate scenario, came to the town to try and stop, you know, to try and stop Wanda from doing what she was doing. And using her magic for that, and stopping the Scarlet Witch before it caused a problem. And then for her to eventually just be the thing that gives rise to the Scarlet Witch, that's a profoundly tragic turn for that character. And I think that would have been better serving the story. And I think, too, the same thing kind of comes from Hayward, where it's like, look, you know that the bad guy's going to be the big government, mustache twirly, haha, I'm here to do this for real reasons. But he never feels really fleshed out. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, he wants to kill these two kids. Like, that's a moment where it's like, it's irredeemable for him. But why, like, for someone who doesn't know what these kids are or what they signify or the fact that it's like there's a lot of things he doesn't know. For him to just be like, okay guys, kill these kids, and for these people from S.W.O.R.D. to just be like, all right, we're gonna kill the kids now, it's a really weird choice for everyone involved. um and I think that beyond that, what this episode does is it does a great job of laying out Wanda as the bad guy, like, and then having her be like, okay, but I'm gonna save the day. But at the end of the day, it's like, you saved the problem you started yourself. Like, at the end of the day, it's not about whether or not, you know, Wanda is the bad guy, because we know she is, and we know that these other people are also bad. But the issue that I keep coming back to is that the way they characterize the ending and they frame the ending. We talk a lot about, especially on Beware of Spoilers, we talked about Set Life with Dune Part 2, taking a moment and using score and and tone, really, like the visual tone of a movie or a show, to help you drive home the emotions that you should be feeling. The defeat of Agatha is so weird because I think that what needed to happen there too, if you keep everything basically the same, and it's this idea that like we should be afraid of her becoming the Scarlet Witch. Like, they don't do enough to sell that, or anything like that. Like, this idea of like, oh well, the Darkhold is, could be. She's talked about in the Darkhold. There's a whole chapter devoted to her, yada yada yada. But there are a lot of things that could have been better laid out leading up to that moment. So that when we get to that moment, like that fight where Wanda is fighting Agatha, and she's missing, but she's putting up the runes around the hex, like that whole thing should have been the moment where what's it called? The descent moment. Like in Oppenheimer, when he comes in after they drop the atomic bombs and he's giving the speech, it's very much shot like and designed to look like a horror movie because it's not a triumphant moment. It's a moment where it's like, oh my god, my creation has been used to kill like millions of people. And like, look, I get he's gonna be the bad. Sorry, I got a phone call while I was in the middle of recording that. He's like that's where we were. The ending of the show is like Wanda decided to take the hex down, and that's what no, we weren't doing that. We were doing the music. Like in Oppenheimer, you get that moment where the music is designed to be like a horror movie. The same thing with Paul Atreides in Dune Part 2, when he's taking over the role as the Lisan al Gaib. That is very much shot and very much scored to be like, oh, this is a bad thing. And you don't get that same thing here. And I think that's a fundamental problem with this, with this whole way they kind of set this up. Because at the end of the day, you need to use the tone of music to set where we are. So for her to outsmart Agatha, it's like, okay, great, she outsmarted Agatha, and now she's absorbed the power, and she has become the Scarlet Witch. That is not a good thing, as we end up finding out, because the Scarlet Witch is this thing. And I also think this show would have been better as the start of a whole phase, or the start of a whole saga, and not just, we're going to wrap this up in the next movie, where Wanda's going to end up dead. I think that's fundamentally a bit of a problem that this show has, too, where it's like, because we know where this ends up, and we know that Wanda's going to go to, you know, and the way they have her there is like, oh, that's the way she is in Multiverse of Madness, the way she even sits the same way, and she's reading the book, she's reading the Darkhold. Like, okay, cool. I appreciate what you're doing here, and I like how it's set, and I appreciate all of that. There is definitely a better way to handle a good amount of this. There's definitely a way to do this to make it feel like, what's it called? Like, like, I think the smarter way to handle this would have been to just have it be, okay, we are going to be facing off against, like, Agatha's going to be defeated here, and then we're stuck. And then there's the whole thing with the Vision. Like, what is Vision... Like, okay, great, so we're bringing back Vision. To what end? Like, that, I think, is the another big issue I have here is, why are we bringing back Vision? What purpose does that serve? And then, when we get to Multiverse of Madness, the omission of Vision is glaring. The omission of Vision from the entire proceedings, where Wanda is, where Wanda is on this rampage, him being on, like, why is Vision not the one to bring her out of it? Like, if this, like, I think that's kind of an issue that we've had with Marvel for a long time, because it's like, when you watch Infinity War, it is kind of this idea that, like, oh, I'm supposed to believe that Gamora and Peter Quill are so in love they're willing to risk half the life in the universe for that love. I don't really do that. Like, and the same thing goes for, Wanda and Vision. And they do a better job of setting it up here and making the two of them feel more connected as characters. I think the big problem becomes, like, if this was a full phase story, and this was the start of it, like, Wanda getting the power of the Scarlet Witch, and then going off on that, and then the Avengers need to team up to take down one of their own, that's a good, like, long arc. Like, that's honestly a fantastic setup for an entire phase leading into an Avengers movie, where it is, like, the idea that, like, okay, so we know Vision's out there, and Vision's the one who can get through to Wanda, and she doesn't know that the White Vision is out. Like, there's so much room for storytime potential that I think that this might be the worst example of something not being ran all the way through from the multiverse saga. Like, this show, I think, after rewatching it, plummets in my original ranking. I had it ranked pretty high originally, because I think they did a good enough job with the sitcom parodies, and it's fun, and it's an exploration of her grief and all of that. But watching it now, with the benefit of the hindsight of everything else, where it's like, when I did the rankings, I did it just based on having watched it the first time, and my memory thinking back to it then how it kind of related to Multiverse of Madness. I've seen Multiverse of Madness a few times since I saw it in the theaters. I have not watched this all the way through. And I think the issue with this is, when I watch this show, I do not feel that the promise of the show and what potential the show could have had is so much greater than the final result. And I think that is a fundamental failing of this show. Like, just imagine if we had gotten an entire thing leading up to an Avengers movie that was Wanda, messing things up, and just this woman out of control spiraling because she lost her support system, and everyone that she that she develops feelings for romantically, platonically, familially. Anyone ends up dying and leaving her, and she ends up left behind, alone and isolated. That is great storytelling potential. That is utterly wasted by doing this and then immediately in the next movie killing her off. Look, she's not really dead. I think that's the big thing with taking consideration here too. There's the old adage in science fiction and fantasy: if there's no body, the character's not dead. If we don't see Wanda's corpse, then she's not dead. And I think that they're going to play with that a little bit in Agatha, because it's like there's that corpse of Wanda, and I don't think that's going to actually be her. I think we're going to end up in a situation where Wanda's going to end up resurrected in some way. And if Wanda is resurrected, then we have the Scarlet Witch again. Like, it's a lot to deal with. And I don't think that they handled it well. But we'll wrap up there for today. I think we've talked about this enough. And look, she'll be back. He'll be back. They'll be back. It's just, it boggles the mind how much they dropped the ball after watching this show, and then seeing what comes of it after. Because it's not even like, I don't even want to specifically blame Multiverse of Madness for this, because if this is Act 1 of this, and then Act 2 is Multiverse of Madness happening the way it does, if Wanda just doesn't die and is just out there somewhere, that's a great bad guy. And look, maybe they make her the first bad guy for the post-Secret Wars era. We're talking so far out. I don't think that they do that. And the other thing is, too, it's like, if you want to do the mutants, I don't think you start with House of M. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot here that could have been better handled, and I think that watching this just pissed me off more. But we get Agatha in 2 weeks, so, we'll see then. But until our next episode, which will be next week when we talk about Multiverse of Madness, have a great rest of your week.